Hello, Christina Giordano here, the founder of Soul, your go-to resource for soulful entrepreneurship. And my philosophy is this: people can no longer be sold to, they must be sold to. That is SOUL''. However, in order to sell with soul, you need to be sold on you first. This is marketing and manifesting with nothing but the essence that is you. This is business that begins within. Now, these YouTube episodes are simply previews of the full episodes that you can find on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The title for this week's episode is Linear Capacity Builds the Runway, Nonlinear Capacity Changes the Altitude, and I'm going to give you a little preview of what exactly that means. Now, I've seen a lot of chat lately regarding capacity, specifically nonlinear capacity versus linear capacity, and I've also seen a little gatekeeping on what nonlinear capacity is. So in this episode, I give full definitions of what exactly it is because I don't gatekeep here. But for today's purposes, I'm going to give you kind of a distinction so that you can understand what your growth looks like as it relates to the type of capacity that you're building. So let's start with linear capacity. Linear capacity says I can do more by adding more. It's like a straight line, and when you're thinking of what would create results for me. So more often than not, it's the thinking of if I work more, I earn more. If I push harder, results come faster. If I optimize better, things stabilize sooner. Linear capacity is essentially something that you use to stabilize, to build, to create, so that nonlinear capacity eventually becomes your new normal. Linear capacity is not a bad thing. And it's also not necessarily something that gets canceled out once you understand what nonlinear capacity is. However, it cannot be relied on completely. Nonlinear capacity works a little differently. Nonlinear capacity says things expand when alignment stabilizes. So it essentially means that once you have stabilized your structure, your messaging, your systems, your identity, once you stabilize all of that, even your nervous system capacity, once you stabilize there, alignment then becomes your goal. You orient yourself towards alignment. And when alignment is your goal and everything is facing the same direction, you're moving as one and in coherence, that's when nonlinear capacity is built, and then movement happens. So think of it this way: if linear capacity looks like effort, result, effort, result, effort, result, nonlinear capacity essentially looks like effort, 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 change, movement, threshold crossed. I'm going to give you a little definition of something as well. It's called the threshold effect, and it happens as a result of nonlinear capacity. So when you're building and you're stabilizing and you're growing and you're creating the foundation that you need in order for things to land, you're essentially going to cross a threshold eventually. And the easiest way to look at this is think of boiling water. As water is increasing in temperature, it's changing. The water is changing. It's getting warmer, it's getting warmer, it's getting warmer. And then all of a sudden, so that's the effort. And all of a sudden, you see steam. So the steam that you see is the visible result that has become visible as a result of crossing a threshold. So think of it in the same way as nonlinear capacity. As you're growing, as you're stabilizing, as you're building, you eventually cross a threshold, which is essentially once you reach a certain point of alignment, and then things start to convert, and then you start to see movement, and then you start to build real sustainable momentum. But here's the thing that a lot of people don't really want to admit: you need both linear capacity and nonlinear capacity as an entrepreneur. You need the linear capacity to build the structure, to build the container, to build the entire foundation of your business. And then you need nonlinear capacity to actually, again, increase the altitude. So if linear capacity builds the runway, nonlinear capacity brings you higher and higher and higher. It's kind of like, yes, you're building the runway for things to land, but with nonlinear capacity, it could be one conversation that changes everything. It could be audience accumulating recognition, and then finally something just goes viral. It could be one internal organization reorganizing something internally that just changes everything externally. So it's not necessarily just a one moment switch, although it can be, but usually it just gets to a certain point of alignment and then things take off. Now, the rest of the episode is essentially looking at what helps stabilize this process. So I talk about anchors, especially the anchors that I have been working with personally while my life is reorganizing around the new systems that I've built. And when I say systems, I mean everything. I have applied the sold approach to every domain of my life. So how I nourish myself, my visibility, my identity, everything is now coherent across the board. And when someone stabilizes themselves towards coherence, something very predictable happens next. External life starts to meet them. It starts to meet them towards truth. And if that's the goal of sold, then essentially what you're building is something that is sustainable, something that is long lasting, something that doesn't require spikes, something that relies on your own alignment for momentum. Now, aside from anchors, we also talk about the difference between structure and surrender and why they are not necessarily opposites, but things that eventually stop competing with each other and eventually cooperate with each other as you're moving through the sold approach. Now, this is because of two things. You can't force your way to 10K months or whatever it is the goal that you want. And you can't float your way to 10K months, meaning you can't rely on hustle culture to get what you want, and you can't rely on bypass culture to get what you want. Soul doesn't necessarily fit in between them. It sits beyond them. It's coherence culture at its core. And so that essentially is essence-led expansion. It's integrity-based growth. And what it is if hustle culture says effort creates results and bypass culture says surrender creates results, sold culture says coherence creates results. And essence-led expansion requires both a balance between structure and surrender. So if this episode sounds like it's something that you're looking for as it relates to your own trajectory, or even something that you're interested in understanding in regards to capacity, definitely check it out. You can find it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And again, it's Sold with Christina Giordano, and I hope to see you there.